So today on the podcast, I'm delighted, absolutely delighted to invite one of my long-standing friends and business colleagues and associates with me, Sarah Byrne. Sarah's Managing Director of Mosaic Events, based in York, in the beautiful city of York in North Yorkshire. And basically, Sarah's been running Mosaic Events for 16 years. So whilst we'll touch on the business a little bit, I'm really interested in exploring how do you maintain that momentum and passion in a mature sort of small, medium-sized business, because I think a lot of business owners probably have the similarity of 16 years, wow, what's next? How do I keep going and that kind of thing? So it doesn't feel like a job, it still feels fresh and new. So that's kind of what we're going to explore. So welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Thank you very much for having me here, Nick. I'm very excited.
Excellent. Well, always a pleasure to be in the same company as you. So let's explore things that maybe our listeners and viewers could be inspired by. So I mentioned earlier you've been going 16 years Mosaic Events. So I've known you all that time, and all that time I'm always amazed by the fact that you are constantly upbeat, constantly positive. Do you want to talk us through going back, how and why you set the business up originally, because that might have a part of why you're still passionate about it. What was the reasoning behind it, and how did it come about?
So when I was a little girl, I knew I'd have my own business. It was always something I wanted. I grew up in a family where my father had his own business, so I always saw from a very young age the kind of real benefits to having your own business. I think one of the main things I would say is I've always loved hard work.
Right.
So it was definitely the way to go. When I was 11. I worked in a restaurant and worked really hard, washing up. I'm not sure if they'd allow it these days, to be fair.
That's child labour.
Exactly. It's not good. But by the time I was 16, I was running the place, along with doing a couple of other jobs as well. So I think actually the person that you are when you're 15 or 16 actually is the person you end up kind of almost reverting back to that. So for me, it was about hard work and always that I loved working with people. I really did. And for me, I always wanted my days to be different and to be challenged. I knew that I wouldn't be happy with it being the same every day. So for me, that's really why I set up my own business, because I knew that it would give me the things that I enjoyed.
Well, when you set up, first of all, why events? And secondly, it was what I would call a generalist event company, wasn't it? Just talk us through why you chose events. If you're going to run your own business, could be anything, I guess. So why did you choose the event space? And, what was it about in the early days for you, Sarah?
Yeah, so I ended up in events really. I suppose it kind of led to events. I started off actually wanting my own restaurant.
All right.
And so I did hospitality and tourism and that sort of thing at college and university. And when I finished, I did a graduate training course with Swallow Hotel Group.
All right.
Which was fantastic. Got to see all the different operations in hotels, but I actually liked the sales side of it the most. And then ended up basically leaving hotels and landing a job in events, which actually the events sector back then wasn't what it is now. And ended up working for a law firm managing their events. I managed a couple of offices there, their different events.
Internal client events, external
Yeah, it was
events?
both. It was full on, actually. It was a lot of events. And it was great, really. I absolutely loved it. And I thought, so I had kind of commercial experience in a kind of high level law firm. And then I thought, I'll get some experience working in public sector, and went to work for the Chief Constable of West Yorkshire Police.
Oh, wow.
So that was really different. So I organised events from that side. But then, so really it kind of paved the way to set up an events company. I never actually worked for an events agency, which actually, with hindsight, I think was the best thing, because I never had any, formed way of doing things. I learned the hard way, really.
You have to sort of make it up as you go along and think what felt right to you. So even though you're working at the law firm and you're working at the sort of the police authority, as it were, was it still just a matter of time then before you thought, right, I'm doing this with a path to setting up my own company at some stage?
Absolutely. I always knew that's what I was going to do. And when I worked at the police, interestingly, it was actually it was a great job, because actually it wasn't as full on as the law firm. So I managed to write my business plan, which was like War and Peace, to be fair, and launched my business pretty much straight away. So when I packed in my job, I had clients, and I think that was the key thing for me, really. I wasn't in a position financially financially where I could, have a couple of months without earning money. So it was quite risky, really. I look back now and I think, wow, gosh, at the time I just did it. But I'm that sort of person, really.
But you've got hard work, you've got a work ethic. I suspect at the back of your mind on some level would have been, if it doesn't work, I'll get a job anyway. Somebody will give me a job because I'll work hard and I'll do it anyway. So you're taking risks, but calculated risks, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Definitely, I'd agree with that, yeah.
Okay. The business has transitioned in that sort of length of time since you've had it. What does it look like now compared to what it looked like in day one?
Well, it's completely different, I will say that. When we started, I literally would do anything for anybody.
Right.
In terms of events. We do, any type of company, any type of size, any type of event. And then as the years have gone on, I realised actually it pays to be focused and niche, and certainly in my sector. And so we, in latter years, now focus on working with associations.
Right.
And delivering conferences in particular. So we do event management, income generation, and also membership management, which is obviously moving slightly away from events, but is a great way of kind of having regular clients.
It adds value to them as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. So it's very different. Plus, the whole setup is really different. It's interesting actually because I've always had an office from day one. So I remember my office back in the day when I started had the biggest size monitor you could imagine on your desk. Do you remember those really deep ones? And it was you went in, there was a plant, a computer monitor taking over the place, and it was like so cold and damp. I was at the Fishergate Centre in York, and it was, it's so different. And now I, have a nice slimline laptop and hop desk. So, times have changed, definitely.
But the times have changed based on the thing. I'll just take you back a little bit. I really do value that niche approach. I've mentioned to a couple of guests on the podcast series so far, I don't think people value generalists anymore. I think people do expect someone to be an expert in a particular field. So why associations, and why the services that you provide to associations? What was because you could have gone down any route at some stage. What was it about that particular niche that was most attractive to you?
So there was a couple of things, really. The first thing was that associations will always need to deliver events, even in times of economic downturn. So that was a kind of obvious one. Also, a lot of associations are run by volunteers, and the kind of vibe that you get working with clients who are part of associations can be very different. It's a little bit more informal, if I'm being honest, and I quite liked that side of it. And we've ended up working heavily in the education sector for associations, and again we kind of fell into it. It was, we got a client who was in education, and then they recommended us to another one. But I will say, I think that for associations we can really add value. The expertise that they need in order to deliver events, not only deliver events but also make them profitable. We really do deliver on that, So for example, an association that we started working with, they from their exhibition they would net, I don't know, 15,000 say. After working with us on changing the sponsorship, the way that they approached it, and exhibitions packages, we got 60 grand in. Yeah. So it's a big difference, and it means that association's got money to put back into it, not only for the conference but also to enhance things for their members. So, and it was an area that was really interesting, I found.
I would imagine it would have been an area that was particularly not overly serviced either. It wouldn't have been a lot of people specifically targeting that niche.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think it's interesting in events, and I think you find as well, where you best sit. And for me, being kind of high-end creative is not really what we were about. The logistics and the process for us is what we're good at, and what associations need. And I identified that, I guess.
Well, I've been involved in a few associations. Speaker. I was an MC at an event just recently, and the association staff are fabulous, but they've got other day jobs, haven't they? So that process, that professionalism, elevating them, to making things more effective for them could only be a benefit, I guess, can't it?
Yeah, and I think it's important for associations as well, because actually what they need to concentrate on is the content, is really engaging with members and actually making it so that people really want to, attend their events and be engaged with them. And, for membership organisations, times have really changed. They've really, really had to, change the way they work and, again, segment the way they work in terms of their audiences, looking at younger people versus maybe people that have been members for years, and how they deliver and their messages to them.
How do they absorb content and how do they engage with the membership brand and all that kind of thing? Yeah. Okay, so interesting. All right, so you run a small business, 16 years you've been going, as I said. There's loads of challenges running a small business. I've got down here a few things. You've got cash flow, balancing the winning of work with delivery of that work, staff, all those kind of things. So what's been the biggest or most regular challenge that you would say you've had to manage over the years as MD of Mosaic Events?
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's pricing.
Right.
For us, as we are a service-based business, in events, it is definitely the biggest challenge. And that's because in events, things happen that are out of your control. So you can sit and plan a job out and think, oh yeah, it's gonna take this amount of time. And actually, you get caught out. And for all the years I've been in business, it is something I've certainly got better at, but it's something that sometimes can still catch us out. Because clients need to have a fixed idea of what it's going to cost them. They do.
Yeah.
But if you're in a situation where something happens, a ball's dropped, and actually it's potentially if you don't do what you need to do, the event's not going to happen. Versus, I need to put an extra invoice in. Well, you can't work like that. You have to deliver the event. Yeah. It's so time sensitive what we do. So for us, we do things like log time, and we try and be realistic with clients and try and obviously leave some room for a bit of extra kind of danger money, as it were.
Yes.
But yeah, for me, that's probably been the biggest challenge.
I think that goes back, I'd like to explore that a little bit as well, because a lot of businesses don't get the scope right at the outset, do they? So looking at that, I think it's really important. I think given the experience you've got, you probably do have a good idea of how many hours it takes to do a certain task or process. But having an agreed scope is really important, but also having an agreed scope that's what is excluded from that scope is just as important to pricing, isn't it? We'll do all this, we'll do all that, but this is actually not including in the scope and the pricing. If you want that, that's fine, we can deliver it, but it's an extra. Is that something you've learned to deliver and deal with over the time, like getting that scope really tight down?
Absolutely, that's it. And I think the challenge you've got in events, because there is so many different areas that you're delivering. If you're delivering an event from start to finish, you're doing everything from working with them on content development, actually structuring the programme, the exhibitors, speakers, delegates, everything. And actually sometimes that is hard to keep to that kind of extra scope. But like you say, as you've done it I've done it for a long time now. I've certainly learned, if you like, the hard way on those things. But yeah, that's definitely the biggest challenge.
Okay, no worries. I'm glad you didn't say staff, because you've got a really good team, haven't you?
Oh, I have. No, I would never say that. Yeah. No, we've got a great team. Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people would say, biggest challenge yet, it's those people who work for me. What an absolute nightmare. Yeah. That doesn't work.
Definitely
at Mosaic
not.
Events. You've got a great team, haven't you? Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question, personality or process, I'm going to call it, okay? So what would you say has the biggest impact on a small business in terms of maintaining their day-to-day passion? Is it the following a process and doing the same thing right, or is it the personality that you bring to it? What's your kind of take on maintaining your own momentum? Because you've got a fantastic spirit, and that spirit doesn't change day to day, 16 years in. So what is it, personality or process? What do you think it defines that for you?
It's both. It really is. For me, process is really important because it's what we do. And, actually, it does really float my boat.
Okay.
But, personality is also really, a big part of it. You've got to enjoy what you do. And I think that's fundamentally it. 16 years on, I still enjoy what I do. I still love going out on site to an event, being with people, dealing with challenges, dealing with nightmares, projectile vomit moments, as we call it in the trade. I love it. I thrive off it. And that's so important. And I think 16 years on, I think you still have to love it. You do.
well, it almost must feel then that it's not really your job. It's just something that you do. Is that fair?
It's a way of life. Absolutely. It really is a way of life.
Yeah.
You know, my job's really interesting because we have our really super busy periods, which can be really full on, and they're not for the faint-hearted, I will say that.
Yeah.
You know, but then we have our quiet periods where, you know, you can take time to relax and reflect, and that's what I like about it, really. It's kind of all or nothing.
But going back to what you said earlier, the very first thing you said was about you've got a great work ethic. And I think that's in someone's DNA or not, isn't it? And I don't think you can teach people that. I think, you know, they can see people having it, but you've either got it or you've not. You've got a great work ethic. So how do you cope with the ups and downs? Because work ethic people like you and like me, we love being busy, don't we? We love being at in like the heart of the tornado, as it were. So when it's not as busy, when you have got a bit of a quiet period, how do you make the most of that, and how does that affect you as a person in your kind of spirit?
I think that's really interesting. I think I've got, as time's gone on, I've certainly got better at taking time out for myself. So in the early days, the hard work ethic, you know, I would probably say I was slightly addicted to work. I absolutely loved it. And I think that it's one of those things that as you go on, you realise that actually you really need to take time out to reflect and to really, you know, take time out for yourself and relax and, you know, give yourself space, because you are better. You're on your A game more when you've had that space. So I think that for me, it's probably more around reflecting on the good stuff. So, you know, it's important in the good times to really reflect on the good stuff and think about,
even when you're busy in those good times.
Absolutely, and think to yourself, you know, actually that was an event. That event was hard. You know, I've done some big events, I've done some challenging events, and when they're over, it's you know, great to sit back and think, yeah, I did that, and that was really difficult. But also, what's important, I think, in the down times where you have really challenging times, what I try and do to kind of see me through is just really take from the situation what I'm going to learn and do differently next time, and just try and bring a positive out of a negative situation and move forward. And I really do live by that, actually. I think that's really important to do.
Well, you over the 16 years I've worked with you on and off, you're very good at kind of working on your business, aren't you, rather than in your business. And it's really commendable for a business owner at a small business level to take that time to reflect. You know, you've had away days, you've had strategy days, you've had sessions where you've brought experts in to look at your business in terms of your people and, you know, all those kind of things. What value do you put on doing that kind of thing? Or is that just filling time waiting for the next gig?
No, that's really important. And I think as the years have gone on, I've realised how important it is. So it's really important to listen to your team in terms of what training and support they need, and making sure that you take time to deliver that. And also, you know, one of the things we do at the end of every year is we sit together as a team and look at the objectives for the next year. That's not just me that does that. We do that as a team together, and look at the areas of support we might need. And like you say, get experts in to come and talk to us, or, you know, often the team will do webinars, or they'll go on courses, or that sort of stuff. So it's really important. I think in our sector, things change a lot. You know, we really do need to be kind of ahead of the game in terms of technology, and that side of it. So yeah, I'd say it's something that, and more recently, have probably spent more time on. It's interesting, I've had a bit of a shift in terms of taking a step back from the business recently and becoming a lot more strategic than I ever have been. And I've already really seen the difference that has made. So
Have you enjoyed taking that step back at first? It might be quite a challenge for someone who, like you say, it's culturally embedded in you. How have you found being able to take the step back?
I found it actually really easy, only because I think I was ready for it. I think 16 years on, times change. You kind of go round the block a couple of times and come round the other end and think, actually, I'm ready for something different, and ready to be challenged in a different way. So one of my team members that had worked with me for 6 years, I promoted her to events and operations manager. She now runs Mosaic day to day, and I've taken a step back, and I'm starting to develop another project, which will keep me interested. And it's linked to events. Essentially, it's training for events managers. So that's kind of been a good step for me.
that's interesting because a lot of business owners particularly, are not the greatest delegators in the world, either by their very nature. You know, they say every business owner's got an element of control freak in them. I think it's one of my guests in the earlier podcast series used that phrase. So how have you found being able to, A, find somebody that you trust with your business, and B, the handover of that trust to that person? Because that's quite inspiring to a lot of business owners listening. They may think, I'd love to do that. What would your advice be around kind of taking that step?
I would say I, for many years, believed it was Mosaic could only be led by me. And I was challenged, actually. I have a business coach. I was challenged by my business coach on this. Mm-hmm. And she was absolutely right to challenge me. And she was like, you know, she really made me think, actually. It was one of those light bulb moments, if you like, which was probably about 4 years ago now. And straight away I realised that actually I was putting barriers up that didn't need to be there. And that actually when you give people the time and the respect and the trust, they really can, you know, they really fly. And I think sometimes that's what some business owners get wrong, actually, is that, you know, you think it's all down to them, that it has to be them, doing the doing, when actual fact it doesn't. And it's been really interesting process because with Sarah, who's taken over, you know, it's been probably a period of over a year it was, because obviously there was some events that I was still heading up that I needed to finish, and I really haven't found it hard, and I don't find it hard in terms of trust, because Sarah has obviously worked with Mosaic Events for 6 years. So actually, you know, the trust was already there. I already knew she could do it. There was no, so I guess in terms of how did I find her? Well, she was a member of staff that I developed actually and mentored, and now she's, you know, she's taken the step forward and managing the business day to day. And do you know what? It's a really great thing to see as somebody's manager, to watch them. You know, she's had some difficult situations that she's had to deal with, and I have let her do it. I've supported her, but and the development and the growth in her in 12 months has been amazing to see. Really,
and that's great for you, as you say. Reflect on that with some pride, don't you?
Yeah, you do. You really do.
Excellent. Well, you don't learn to drive by sitting in the passenger seat either, do you? No. So you've got to let them have the steering wheel occasionally.
Absolutely.
And try that. Okay. Something I'd like to explore. You recently posted a great little video on sort of the values of the business. I don't want to explore too much about values. I've done that with other guests and things, but you know, the impact of those values. Why? What sort of impact would you say your values have as Mosaic Events internally and externally then?
Massive. I mean, it was a piece of work we did about 4 years ago as a team. Yeah. So, you know, in the early years of business, I had values, but I don't think I really quite, you know, marked them out and said, okay, this is what they are. I knew that, you know, there were certain things that I believed, and I suppose that subconsciously I did check in with them. But it's about 4 years ago, we did a piece of work where we sat down as a team and identified the values. And you know what? They've been great as a check-in process. So it's almost like when we recruit a new team member, do they fit with these values? Suppliers, do they respect us? Are they efficient? Are they fun to work with? You know, it's that type of thing. So I think values are really important. I think most business owners, if you haven't sat down and looked at your values, you'll know what they are. They'll be, you know, they'll be similar, but I would encourage business owners to involve their staff in that process, because it's not just about what you think, it's about actually what the team think, and actually your clients, what they think, what words they use to describe you, and that tells a lot as well, you know. So,
well, values can't be imposed on someone, can they? Because of the very nature, they're not their values if you do that. So your team involvement, your supply chain, your customer involvement is really important. But that's a great little piece of video. I'd encourage anybody watching or listening to the podcast to look it out for Mosaic Events and their values piece. It's all over LinkedIn under Sarah Byrne's LinkedIn profile. So little picture for you there, Sarah.
Thank you for that,
no worries,
Nick.
That's fine. Okay. So over the years, you had to make some big decisions, I would suspect, you know, focusing on the markets that you want to look at, the exclusion of others, staff decisions, that sort of stuff. How do you go about making those decisions to ensure that they're the best for the business and best for you as the business owner? What's your decision-making process that allows you to make the best use of that kind of judgment?
So I would say my values first and foremost. So actually, does this align with our values? You know, without naming names, we had a client fairly recently that we decided wasn't aligned with our values, and therefore we don't work together anymore. And you know, that might sound harsh, but I think it was the best thing for them as well. You know, it's about getting on the same page, from both sides. How do I make decisions? Well, values first and foremost. I would again discuss with the team, in particular Sarah. And you know, we've been known, Sarah and I, to do the good old pros and cons approach of, you know, old-fashioned pros, cons.
Flip chart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Why not? It works. It really does work. You know, opening your mind, really thinking about it and pushing your thinking. But I mean, most people will probably say this. Your gut feeling is a big thing. And I do believe in that. And I do, you know, try to listen to my gut feeling as well at the same time. So try to make a kind of logical decision, but also making sure that it's backed up by your gut, you know?
I think the thing with the gut instinct is if it feels wrong, it probably is on some level, isn't it? Yeah. And the thing with that, we've all got experiences of where you've taken on a job with a little bit of trepidation, thinking this will be a nightmare. And funnily enough, it is. And it's often the ones that are a nightmare that their service requirements are just unrealistic, and they're not prepared to pay for those service requirements. So sometimes your gut's a good place to start.
Definitely, and you get better at identifying those situations as you go on.
16 years in, you'll have some of that Actimel sort of going on in your stomach, thinking, yeah, good bacteria, bad bacteria. I'm going to avoid the bad ones, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Really? Excellent. Okay. 16 years as a business. There's loads of support out there. Can I ask you what you've ever tapped into as a business owner, particularly in terms of supporting your personal development as a managing director, and then perhaps the development of your business as a whole? Because it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of support out there, and I think there's even more support actually now. When I first started, interestingly, in the first couple of years, I was a member of BNI. Used to get up really early in the morning and go to the meetings. For
those who don't know, BNI is Business Network International, isn't it? A weekly networking event held on the same day every week, and it's early. It's quite evangelical, but it works for a lot of businesses. It's very driven around referral strategy, etc. I know loads of people who've been BNI members and it works a treat. I've known loads of people who've been attended BNI and it's not for them. But you went down that BNI route for networking purposes in the early days. So sorry, I just want to explain to the listeners and viewers, you know, what the kind of process was, because there's different types of networks, isn't there? Are you a morning person, Sarah?
I am absolutely a morning person.
Good
so
job.
7 a.m. was great for me. I loved it.
That's okay.
I think what BNI gave me was that weekly support. You know, that it was all okay. It was about getting business, absolutely, and I did get business from it. I think it works better for some businesses than others. Yeah. But for me, when I was starting out, I needed that kind of peer support. I needed the confident. You know, it was a confidence builder, I suppose. Yeah. So BNI in the early days certainly support. You know, was great for my business and for me. All throughout really 16 years on and off, I've been a member of the Association of British Professional Conference Organisers, ABCO, and I found that incredibly useful, because obviously all the members are in similar positions to myself, so we do share best practice. They have great networking events, great team, you know, so that's been really useful. So there's things like that, but for me, I think the most beneficial thing over the years has been my support network, my immediate business contact network, like your good self, Nick. I've rang you many a times and said, Nick, what would you do in this situation? You know, and I think that's great. My advice to anybody would be identify who your key people are around you. I remember when I had to do a presentation, I was really scared, and I rang you up. I was like, Nick, I'm really scared. And you were like, you should have rang me sooner. This is what you need to do. And you told me, and I went, and you were in the audience giving me the thumbs up. And it was great. It was all right on the day.
I remember smiling and saying, if you're looking for eye contact, look to me. I'll be giving you the verbal, the facial sort of support, etc. By the way, I do remember you smashed it out the park, but not unusually, you know, a lot of people are nervous about those kind of things. I do like the idea of having a peer group of just, you know, like you say, associates. I've got them, people I trust, and, you know, you be one of them, and there's lots of other people. And my podcast guests, to a certain extent, on certain subjects, are the people they're the go-to people for particular areas, aren't they, really? So you're not tapping into anything particularly formally, except perhaps for the association of conference organisers you mentioned. A lot of it's informal and just you're quite good at self-development, aren't you? You read a lot, you study things, and you sort of take on board things from other sources, yeah?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've massively benefited from, and I would really, again, say it's one of the top things that has worked for me, is I've probably had, over the period of at least 8 years, a business coach. And for me, that is absolutely brilliant because it gives me an opportunity to literally pay someone to listen to me bang on about all the things I need to discuss.
Hang on. I've listened to you bang on for 16 years.
Exactly.
Could I have got paid for that?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Excellent. Okay.
No, but I find it really valuable. Business coach, a great business coach should challenge you, should make you think outside the box.
Yeah.
And I would honestly say, I think that's probably been the biggest impact for me.
It keeps you, I hate the word real, but it does keep you real in terms of someone's challenging you in a way that says, really? What about? Or is that, it's all about goal setting, isn't it? And they're stretching you and pushing you to be the best you can be, but in a safe environment, I guess, isn't it really? So
yeah,
that's
definitely.
Good advice.
I think for me as well, because I am a completer finisher, I do really have a lot of value in setting goals, setting objectives, and having someone to almost be accountable to. Yeah. And for me, that's a big part of it as well.
So they're your goal conscience, really.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. So part of this is about maintaining momentum and passion in a mature business that you run. So if you've got any listeners or viewers who are running a mature small business, it can get quite repetitive. It might get a bit mundane, even a bit boring, because it becomes just day to day, doesn't it? So what advice would you give someone if they do feel a little bit less in love with their business because it's become a little bit repetitive? What would you say to them?
I'd say look at introducing some change, basically. For me, I think always reflect on what you're offering. How can you improve that and make it different and move with the times? So I think in any sector, I think if you can do that, it does keep it fresh. And for me also, looking at the projects that you actually do. So if you are a service-based business, looking at the type of clients that you work with and, is there any way that you can perhaps change the sector that you work in to make it a bit more interesting? I mean, obviously for us, we'll often get events that come back to us year on year and we love those clients, obviously, but we also love clients that maybe come to us as a one-off with a big, really different project that's exciting and a bit different, and that keeps it fresh. But I think for anybody, I would think, like myself really recently, I've got to the stage where I said to you before, I feel like it's time for a little change, and I'm quite open and honest about that. And one of the things obviously I've chosen to do is develop events management training, but practical training for events managers. And I think that I'd say that to any business owner really. Look at your business and think about actually, is there anything else I can do here to develop new income streams or make it a little bit more interesting for me day to day? Or like me, take a step back. Give yourself the space to have time to explore other things. And for me, that's kept it fresh, definitely.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that does maintain that passion and spirit that you've got, which, I think if whoever's met you, Sarah, the first thing they'd say about you is they'd describe you as enthusiastic, wouldn't they? And passionate. So 16 years in, that's a commendable credit to you, really. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, finish with I always finish the podcast with a bit of a lesson or a golden bullet, as it were. So what's the biggest lesson that you've learned about yourself over the years as managing director of Mosaic Events? Sorry for the tough finish, but that's quite a tough, challenging question. What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself?
Without a doubt, how resilient I am.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. If I'd have sat down and looked at the years ahead of me back in the day, I'm not sure, it would have been something that'd have been like, yeah. But as time goes on, I think one of my favourite things that I say to myself when times are hard, there's been times over the years where I've been short of business or, there's been a massive problem. And I always a little saying that I say to myself, I say, you know what, one phone call, that's all it takes to change the situation I'm in. Yeah. If I'm looking for more work and I'm in a situation where I think, where am I going to get that work from? All it takes is one phone call. Yeah. So for me, it's pushing myself through very difficult times, and there has been some difficult times, and getting through the other end. So resilience, absolutely. And of course, in events, you've got to be pretty resilient.
I'd have to say, if you couple resilience with work ethic, it's a pretty unstoppable combination, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Excellent. Well, Sarah, that's been an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on the podcast. Obviously, I love spending time in your company as one of your valued business associates. I do listen to you drone on and hammer on a lot. That's not true. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board. We'll put your details on the end of the podcast so people can contact you if they're an association looking to have their events upskilled and professionalised. And as I say, thank you for coming and being a guest of the Impact Sessions podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely loved every minute.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Thank you.